I think from my experience, there's a lot of people that want that upward mobility, but the barrier to entry is so high, they get frustrated or they're not willing to put in the work to do it. But like US versus Europe, upward mobility seems to be more achievable in Europe versus in the United States. Just a few examples. Yes, the United States is huge compared to like say France or even all of Europe. But like I got a sweet Airbnb in the heart of Lisbon for 99 euros a night. You can't get a hotel off the random interstate exit somewhere in middle of USA for less than $150, right?
Exactly.
Like it's considerably much more expensive here. You can get flights from, I don't know, anywhere from Portugal to Spain or Italy to Madrid, whatever, for like, less than 100 euros. You can't fill up your gas tank in your car for that much, depending on where you live in the US. It's just, I do think that there's a real valid point about the upward mobility being more achievable. Still hard for like the Europeans out there. Like, I'm not saying it's easy, everybody can do it, but comparing and contrasting, I do think it's much more burdensome in the US to achieve those things, and I think that's aligns with your journey as well.
Right. I mean, yeah, and again, that quality of life, the goal in Europe has always been to share that as much, that all the population gets as much of that quality of life as possible. There's obviously no place is perfect, but what I always say to people is like, there are fast food joints, American fast food joints popping up in France constantly, right? I mean, McDonald's was number one of new businesses for years in France. All their employees get 6 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks paid vacation. All of them get full healthcare coverage, So imagine that here. If you're working at a fast food joint, you don't get 5 weeks vacation. No, you're lucky if you get 2 to 3 weeks. And this is a given. This is everyone. So we could do it. It's just the will is not there and perhaps greed. And as a businessman, that's the part that when I talk to fellow businessmen here, they think I'm off my rocker. I'm like, my employees should have that time off. They need to be with their families.
Yeah.
They need to experience life. It's not all about work. So I think that's the wonderful thing about Europe too, which is reminding you it's not always the bottom line. It's not always the rat race. You don't have to.
Yeah.
And on the other side, it's been criticized. I think there's some validity to it, that ambition there sometimes not is seen as dirty and bad. And when it's a little story, when I put my business plan together, I had it down as my first restaurant and all the numbers were in there. And to make sure it was good, I gave it to a business student, MBA student. He said, "Oh no, you're thinking too small. You have to have like 50 restaurants by your first year and 200 by the second." He just had these crazy numbers. And I bring it to the bank in France. And they go, "Mr. Carlson, we love your idea and everything, but why don't we just start with one restaurant? We'll just get one open and then we'll worry about that later." So that to me was a contrast of we just want so much here sometimes where there it's like, what's enough?
Yeah.
I think that's, yeah.
I like that enough. Side note, my first corporate job was for a large US bank, and this is post like getting a bachelor's degree. So investing in this opportunity. I had 10 vacation days my first year, and then I was awarded 5 extra vacation days after 5 years at that company. So after 5 years, I had 3 weeks of vacation, whereas in France, you're saying like everybody's entitled to 6 weeks right off the bat.
Yeah, 5 minimum, and most are up to the extra, with the extra holidays, 'cause
For
you get
for any job.
and it's just the law. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
must
they come
be
to you and
nice.
say, well, they'll say, "Why didn't your staff take it?" And it's not an excuse to say, "Oh, they didn't want it."
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to say, "Okay, you guys got to go take your vacation now."
I
Or you
love
can
that.
sign a piece of paper where they say, "No, I don't want it." They can do that. They can sign a piece of paper, but otherwise it's required. And you can make it work. You make your business work, believe it or not.
Yeah, there's studies after studies that have been done that
Yeah.
when people disconnect, they come back and they can do better work. When you disconnect and remove yourself from the scenario, from the day to day,
Yeah.
whether you're the business owner or the employee, it gives yourself to look at the situation through a different lens, and you can problem solve when you're away. Like I can sit at my computer all day working on the podcast or trying to overcome a challenge I have. But then I'm like, I take a break, I go for a run. I'm not even thinking about the challenge that was in front of me, but I'm like, oh, boom, that's the idea. Like that's what I needed. Now
Yeah.
problem solved. Like you can sit there and do all the work, but you're not going to come up with the answers. You need to afford yourself the opportunity and that space. And when people do that, that's where good things happen. So I don't understand America's desire to not take time off because it's been proven that it's the least effective way to do things. Make it
Right.
make sense.
I can't tell you how many years it took me to not feel guilty about taking vacation. I would
Yeah.
feel guilty taking a week or two off, and I look back at that now, and I think that's madness. Why did I think that? I know why I
Yeah.
did. It's just,
Yeah, I had
well,
a job once where I was commuting 2 hours a day round trip, and it was a good job. Long commute, but it was a good job, good opportunity for me. But after a certain point in time, I just became like numb to that's what I was doing.
mm,
And then I did this for multiple years, and just like happenstance, I had scheduled two sort of vacations in July. I forget what year. It was in July though. And the first week of July I went on like a family vacation, and then to the second, like middle half to the end of July, I went on a trip with my friend. And so the first week I was, and like I had taken vacations, I guess, prior to that. But the vacations I had taken were just a week, just a week. And I went back and I did the same commute. Everything felt normal. But it wasn't until like that July, where I was off more days than I was actually working, that I came back from those trips in August. I'm like, this is madness. I do this every day. This
yeah,
drive is painful. And it was
yeah,
just like, I needed more than 5 days away for it to kick in, to be, you've become numb to this routine. You've become
yes,
numb to investing, 10 hours of your week into just driving to and from a job that's not getting paid for, right?
yeah. It's funny you should say that because the French would always say to me, if I took a week, they'd say, "That's it. You need at
Yeah,
least two. You need at least 2 weeks to disconnect." And I
yeah,
didn't understand that. And then how many times I have friends coming to visit to France, and they're coming there for 3 days, 2 days.
yeah,
New York Times has this thing every time in the travel section, 36 hours in whatever city. And I'm like, that's crazy. That's a day and a half, and that's counting your sleep. And I know people have limited time, but boy, the wisdom of French was that you're right. You need at least 2 weeks to disconnect.
yeah. I mean, like, I can't do the 36 hours in the city thing. Like, I need, like, with jet lag and stuff, give me a half a day to a day just to not do anything. And
Exactly.
then we can talk about activities, right?